Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, creative youth development CYD organizations have been expanding their work to provide greater support to students, families, and communities impacted by the pandemic. To strengthen this response from the field, the Lewis Prize for Music offered a COVID-19 response grant to 32 organizations of varying size and geographic location, totaling $1.25 million. In addition to this effort, we set out to learn more about this work via a field-wide survey collected from over 280 music CYD organizations, alongside the voices of youth leaders and prominent CYD researchers. It considers not only the impact that music CYD organizations have had in their communities since the pandemic, but also how they are positioning young people to innovate, plan, and imagine new pathways towards just futures beyond this inflection point in our collective history. In the midst of a global crisis and pandemic, music-based CYD organizations have managed to provide direct services similar to how communities might receive support from a social service agency. An overwhelming 80% of respondent organizations identified with offering direct services to their communities before the pandemic. This grew to 86% of organizations offering direct services in the midst of the pandemic. Additionally, the number of organizations that rose to the challenge of supporting their communities with housing support, income support, and technology access doubled. BIPOC leadership is notably advantageous to CYD organizations looking to effect systems change. While a little over half of respondents engaged in expanded partnerships in their work in the pandemic, BIPOC leadership represented 63% of those organizations. This is significant in that 89% of the organizations that expanded partnerships also offered multiple direct services to their community beyond their core programming, while only 79% of those that didn't expand partnerships were able to offer multiple direct services. This means that 64% of the organizations working at this nexus of systems change are BIPOC-led. This is remarkable considering that BIPOC leadership only accounts for 44% of the total survey respondents. In the midst and in the wake of uprising calling for justice for stolen Black lives, even in the middle of the pandemic, young people led movements for racial justice, gender justice, environmental justice, health equity, income equality, disability justice, and more. While 65% of organizations surveyed answered our questions surrounding racial justice movements, of the respondents that answered, 76% of organizations identified they were supporting young people in getting connected to and growing in leadership around racial justice movements in their communities. 54% of the respondents who supported young people in getting involved in racial justice movements were BIPOC-led. And 81% of the BIPOC respondents supported young people in getting involved in movements. 100 distinct combinations of musical genres were represented across the organization's teaching methods. Organizations who taught 3 or more musical genres, what we call multi-genre, showed more present markers of systems change. 186 or 66% of organizations surveyed state that 61% or higher of the youth they serve are from marginalized backgrounds. 118 or 64% of the organizations serving these majority marginalized youth teach 3 or more musical genres. 92 or 78% of the 118 serving marginalized youth are multi-genre teaching organizations supporting young people in movement work. 93% of multi-genre organizations serving majority marginalized youth provided direct services before the pandemic. After reviewing our findings, we invite other funders and policymakers interested in supporting systems change work via the field of music CYD to join us in considering the following series of recommendations. 1. Amplify, support, and fund BIPOC leaders. 2. Amplify, support, and fund organizations teaching 3 or more musical genres. 3. build analysis with young people as organizations and as a field about the connections between direct service and movement building. We believe that CYD organizations are creating spaces for radical imagination grounded in the redressing of fundamental human needs. We encourage you to learn more and take a closer look at all our findings on our website at theLewisPrize.org.